Welcome back to the Ed Show. Big finish tonight. Democrats push a simple concept that I think every American can relate to: fairness. This week, Democratic Senator Sheldon Whitehouse will introduce a version of the Buffett rule requiring people making more than $1 million a year to pay at least 30% income tax. Whitehouse has two co-sponsors so far and says the bill is in much better position after President Obama highlighted the Buffett rule in the State of the Union address. Republican Congressman Paul Ryan predicted exactly the opposite.
What we have learned with the president time and again is he is going to put some kind of poll-tested line in a State of the Union address and then have no follow-up whatsoever.
But the president left no doubt of his intentions when he spoke to the Democrats last week at a retreat.
So we're going to push hard for the Buffett rule. We're going to push hard to make sure the millionaires, somebody making over $1 million a year, isn't getting tax breaks and subsidies that they don't need. Not out of envy, but out of a sense of fairness and a sense of mutual responsibility and a sense of commitment to this country's future. That's what we're fighting for. And the American people understand that.
Newt Gingrich called the idea stupid. Of course, he and the other Republican candidates would cut taxes for the wealthy even further than where they are right now. Let's turn to Robert Reich, former Secretary of Labor under the Bill Clinton administration, currently professor of public policy at UC Berkeley and author of the book Aftershock. Mr. Reich, great to have you with us tonight. Is this a good idea? What kind of revenue could it generate? Would it really close the gap? What do you think?
Well, it is a good idea. It's a minimum tax. In other words, it doesn't. It's the least that somebody who's a millionaire would be paying, and the estimates are really somewhere in the range of $40 to $80 billion. I mean, this is not chicken feed we're talking about. It's fair. I mean, most Americans support this. I think Republicans are going to be in a very difficult place and a very difficult position saying no to this.
Here's Republican Senator Jon Kyl on the floor today. Here it is.
President Obama is campaigning for re-election on a soak the rich kind of platform. He argues that income inequality and economic fairness are two of the defining issues of our time. In his narrative, a more prosperous and fair society requires more balance or redistribution.
Mr. Reich, if we go back to the old rates, which they were when you were in the Clinton administration, were you soaking the rich back then, and did it work?
Well, not only were we not soaking the rich, I mean, the rates were higher than they are now, but, Ed, we had a massive growth, 22 million net new jobs during that period. But you don't have to even go back to the Clinton administration. Go back to a prior Republican administration, Dwight D. Eisenhower, a Republican president in the 1950s, whom nobody accused of being a socialist. The actual marginal tax rate on people whose income was the equivalent of $1 million today was, when you took all of the deductions, all the tax credits, was 52%. The official rate was 91%, marginal tax rate. But even after all the deductions, they were paying 52%. I mean, and this is a Republican administration in the early 1950s. So for Republicans now to say that this is outrageous or kind of confiscatory is absurd. I might also add, Ed, that in the 1950s, the top 1% were taking home only about 10% of total income in this country. Today, they're taking home twice that much.
Yeah. Well, this, I think, is a great campaign effort, but it's also morally the right thing to do. I mean, wealthy people in this country can pay more. If we're going to fix our Treasury, there's going to have to be some shared sacrifice. They've had all the breaks in the last 10 years. Republicans, of course, will vote against it. But polls show Americans favor raising taxes on the wealthy. Even Republicans favor it. Even 51%. Even millionaires are in favor of it.
Absolutely.
So how hard should the Democrats push this one?
I think that this could be one of the defining issues in the campaign. Congressional Republicans will obviously vote against it. I think every Democrat should vote for this. The president should talk about it all the time because it is fairness. It's patriotism. It's the question of whether we're all in this together. And if the rich don't pay more, the rest of us are either going to have to pay more or have fewer and less public services.
It also sets up the Republicans to vote against the middle class, doesn't it?
Exactly.
I mean,
it illustrates it kind of smokes them out, Ed, and I think that the Democrats have got to do that finally. I mean, we've had years of allowing the Republicans to say one thing and then vote something else. We need to smoke them out and see whether they are in fact on the side of average working people.
A new poll also shows that Americans believe President Obama understands average Americans. Romney and Gingrich, not so much. These are pretty compelling numbers. And you think that this could be a defining issue. Does that mean that possibly the Democrats could take back the House on this issue?
I think so, Ed. I'm not sure about the Senate. The Senate is going to be much harder. But I think the Democrats, if they make this a defining issue, have a very good chance of taking back the House.
Senator Whitehouse says that there are huge exceptions to our progressive tax system. I mean, do you think this is going to fix it?
Well, it depends. If this is designed to be airtight, I mean, nothing is airtight, obviously. But look at you're talking about a minimum tax here, and no deductions, no tax credits. Nobody can actually who's earning $1 million or over can get away with being in that top tax bracket and not paying under 30%. I mean, if this can be pulled off, and I believe it can, we do have we do have precedents historically. Then I think that this would make a big difference, and it would be very important to the country.
Going to be awfully important to get Republicans on the record before the election. Early and often, I would say. Robert Reich, great to have you with us tonight. And the main thing I think Americans need to realize is that this would help close the gap. And do we matter as citizens anymore? Do what we think in the majority, does that matter to these lawmakers? We'll find out.